Hey everyone, welcome to Interviews with Integrity. I'm Leo Sandoval, your host, and I'm so excited to share with you today and just give people the education of the home ownership process. And, so we've been going through a series here. We started with the lender, Kelly Overgard with Axia Home Loans and Kevnick Mortgage. And once you get pre-approved and you're home shopping with your realtor, you get your offer accepted, and then you go to the inspection, which is the next step of the process. And so our last interview, I went from Kelly to Ruben with Structure Tech Home Inspections, and they do a fantastic job in the Twin Cities here. As you heard Ruben say, he's probably the biggest inspection company in the Twin Cities. They have a phenomenal reputation, and so it's awesome having him. And now we're at the last part of the process, which is the title company. And we're going to dive in deep with Michael Nordman from Edgewater Title Company. And he's going to give us some details on what is a title company? What do they do? Do they help buyers? Do they help sellers? And so we'll ask them these individual questions so that we can equip you to understand the whole process. And so I just remember when I was going through the process myself, and this was about 4 years ago. And even like going through the process, there's so many parts moving, and it can be so overwhelming. And even afterwards, you're like, what it just happened, and so that's what I want to help equip people with, is ahead of time preparing you for what the process looks like, and then that way you can kind of just have that education. And so when I get into that part of the process, a lot of times people don't even know what a title company is. Like, who's a title company? What do they do? And so we're going to equip you with that today. And so I'm going to bring up my guest, Michael Nordman. Everyone say welcome to Michael. What's up, buddy? Oh, your sound. Hold on one second. Gotcha.
All
What's up?
right.
I
How
can
we
hear you.
doing?
How you doing?
Doing well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm super excited. You've done a phenomenal job with all my clients. Michael's been my go-to with Edgewater Title Company, ensuring it goes as smooth as possible. And right out the bat, I want to give you some props, give you some credit. I mean, just as a small example of the awesome work that you do, we had one set of clients who just got really, really sick and was not able to make it to the pre-sign on the closing. And Michael will get into kind of what those terms mean. But Michael went out of his way to go to the client's house and get signatures so that we could help these clients make it through this process successfully. And man, they were so impressed with you, Michael. And that just reassured, why I have so much trust and belief in you and that part of the process. It is a very, very important part of the process. So just want to give you a little pat on the back with that, and I'll turn it over to you. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How long you've been in the title work, and anything you want to share about Edgewater yourself, and kind of what brings you to this point.
Yeah, so I've been in the title side of the industry for almost going on 20 years now. Just by perhaps happenstance, I fell into this side of the industry as opposed to the lending and real estate division in which you find yourself situated. So I've been with Edgewater Title Group for about 5 years now, and of course, fill varying roles, and really my primary presence now is at the closing table. And of course, we as title also facilitate and take care of quite a few things behind the scenes in which I'm about to discuss with you shortly. But again, I love meeting people, and I just get so much satisfaction and gratification from seeing them, pursue their dream and purchase their home and see them at the finish line.
Yeah, and that's what it's about. That is very rewarding, getting to see them. You're at the best part, the finish line. So when they come and they meet you and you're helping them through that, they're like, man, we love Michael, because you're right there to see him, sail. And so, great. Well, thank you so much for a brief introduction of who you are and what brings you to this point. We're really glad to have you and really excited to learn what you're going to share with us. And so I'm going to jump right in with the first question. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's do it. So what is a title company and what do they do?
So the specific features of a title company are dealing with the legal side of the transaction. So you, for example, get a purchase agreement accepted at, let's just say, for example, 123 Main Street. And our responsibility is to see that to fruition and honor the terms of the contract. So now, referencing this property, and again, just imaginary 123 Main Street, again, you reference that as the description of the property, whereas we are most concerned with what is the legal description of the property. So what is this parcel of land in for which this house situates on? And that's what everything stems from. So now when this order comes to us, we end up conducting what's considered or called an abstract. So we go and we research this property to figure out who holds title and perhaps who has a legal interest in the property. And furthermore, what types of liens and defects might be additionally attached to the property.
Awesome. So a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, making sure that there are no liens on the house. Because what happens if someone is attempting to buy a home and any of those scenarios that you just described, like what happens if that is the case?
So it's our responsibility for which to remedy any of these potential defects. And of course, in this circumstance, seller guarantees a marketable title. And so what we do is we guarantee a property that's free and clear of defects. Because of course, upon them signing a warranty deed, that in fact conveys the property to a respective buyer and for which they take on legal ownership or interest in the property.
Absolutely. So I got two questions that came from that. Number one, what is a warranty deed? And number two, can you give us just an example of a situation that might deter someone from being able to take that ownership of kind of what the scenarios you described, but maybe just like a deeper scenario of like Mr. Johnny's Plumbing Company, or even what any other tax scenarios or any some specific scenario. But let's start. What is a warranty deed?
So a warranty deed is just one of many different types of deeds. And a deed in and of itself is a legal conveyance. So for our purpose, in just speaking generally, most oftentimes we'll see a warranty deed. And it's nothing more than a seller warranting forever that the property is free and clear of any major liens, defects, encumbrances, so that next buyer can take possession of the property with enjoyment and not have to worry about any encumbrances or problems surfacing with title in the future if they want to take a mortgage out against it or if they want to go and sell the property in the future.
Yeah. And so then the second part of that is give us some examples of a scenario that it's your job to try and help prevent or navigate through.
So upon, and just in basic terms, most people oftentimes will take out a mortgage against their property. Okay. And so in that particular circumstance, upon them signing a mortgage at closing, that in fact is what's considered a lien against the property. So it's our responsibility and for which to perfect recording that and ensure a lender primary lien position and or interest in the property in the event a buyer or borrower doesn't pay the bank back. And so what we concern ourselves with is being able to mitigate and research potential liens, as I had just suggested, with mortgages.
Yeah.
There's also contractor, it's called mechanics liens, that can be placed against the property for the work that was conducted. And if they were left unpaid, of course, they have an entitlement to get their money. And so they can place a lien against the property for assurance that at some point in the future, they will get paid.
Yeah.
And of course, additionally, we always have to consider the government as well. So there are property taxes. So the government's entitled to their property tax money. If it's left unpaid, the government, of course, is going to place a lien against the property and for which to collect that money again at a future point in time. So, and as well, there's also what would be considered, assessments. And sometimes cities will go through and they'll do capital improvements to streets, roads, et cetera. And then per the contract, we just have to differentiate and decipher as if, sellers to pay those or buyers to assume those until the balance of that assessment's paid off.
Okay. So I had a question that kind of came from that, because this stuff goes deep, I mean, for the everyday person, that's why they have us help them with this process, is because it is a lot of tough language. It is a lengthy process. There's a lot to it. There's a lot of moving parts. And so that's why we do this, is to help people through that process and get to the finish line. And so I'm trying to think like how to articulate my question. So if there was let's say a tax lien on the property, and I'm with my buyers buying that property, and you discover this as the title company, that's what you're doing. You're trying to protect my buyer, right? And so what are the different scenarios that could take place in that situation?
So prior to, of course, a seller being able to convey the property, we would demand that those taxes be paid at closing. Because if there are any delinquencies in that capacity, then of course what would happen is we cannot record a warranty deed granting them interest or title to the property, and or we can record a mortgage if they happen to assume that. So really, all liens need to be discharged on the property in order for them to have quiet enjoyment of free and clear title.
Absolutely, and that is like the legal technical term of getting your house. So that's awesome. Thank you. You're doing a great job. This has been awesome. We're learning tons. So then let me ask you the next question. Keep things moving along here, but it's all kind of sewn right into each other. So then I kind of gave the example of like, if I have a buyer and you relayed, that it would be your mission to protect that buyer in that scenario of there being any liens on the home that they're taking ownership of, enjoyment, as you say. And so my next question is, we know you help buyers based on my previous example. Do you help sellers as well?
Absolutely. So it's just kind of a reverse function. Same thing applies in terms of signing documents. It's just a little bit different. So now when we represent sellers, a seller will go ahead and list their property, same effect, offer gets accepted, and then the purchase agreement gets parlayed or forwarded on to us. So at that point, we know that we have an open and or active file. However, the one key differential with representing sellers is that whatever title company is representing the buyer, they are the ones that are responsible for executing or putting together what's called the title commitment. And so the title commitment just calls for actions that have to be taken. And as we had suggested, liens, judgments, encroachments, et cetera, against the property in order for the seller to be able to perform and convey the property.
Gotcha. So essentially, as we look at this bigger picture, let's say I have a client, Mary is her name. Mary contacts me and says, I want to buy a house. I say, okay, let me get you connected with one of my lenders. We go home shopping, we get our offer accepted, and Mary is moving, moves through the inspection, and then next is the closing, right? So I get her connected with you, and so at that point, there's not only me, you, and the lender, but on the other side, there's going to be the seller and their title company, right? So at
That's
this
correct.
point, there's title companies on both sides of the transaction, and so that's kind of the overview that you're giving us, in explaining all that is buyers and sellers both hire title company to make the process come together and close successfully. Am I hearing that right?
That is correct. And I mean, and ultimately, everybody gets cued into the process and into the equation. So we all
Yeah.
know who's working in conjunction with each other. And then, of course, over the course of the terms and the contracts, if things get modified, so addendums or amendments are created, they all get dispersed in accordance as well, so that we all have access to perfect information.
Mm-hmm.
So really, the critical aspect of all of this is communication.
Mm-hmm.
Communication's very critical in order for us to all be working in unison with one another.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So, and as we kind of move to our next question, so the title company helps buyers and sellers, both sides of it, close the deal successfully.
That is correct. So now the dynamics have changed a little bit in the last few years here.
Yeah.
And so now what we kind of see is an untraditional format, but it's a slightly more intimate setting. So as that situates, with sellers, sellers pre-sign their documents now. So
Mm-hmm.
a few days prior to closing, or perhaps even a couple weeks, they can go ahead and they can execute their documents. And then those get sent to the representative or respective buyer's title company.
Mm-hmm.
So now on the converse side, same thing applies. If I'm representing, buyer Susan, and she wants to utilize Edgewater Title Group for their services, documents come to us, and then we're the ones that indeed prepare her documents from her lender
Yeah.
once they get the clear to close, and then we're the ones responsible for facilitating all the disbursements, going through documents, et cetera.
Gotcha. So when you say disbursements, what are you referring to?
So now, again, kind of getting back to what we were discussing with any items to be paid off. So once money is exchanged from the bank, and of course from the buyer, once they bring their funds to closing, then what'll end up happening is we pay off whatever lien holder. So, for example, if there's a first mortgage and a second mortgage, we're responsible for paying them off. Secondarily, if there's any taxes or any supplemental liens or judgments, we have to pay those off again as well to clear up title. And then we're responsible for recording the mortgage itself and as well the warranty deed
Mm-hmm.
conveying interest.
Mm-hmm. And then, what if I had, let's say, what if I sold a 400K home and I owed 200K on it, and then I didn't have any liens or anything like that? How do I get paid?
So what'll happen is this then. So as that situates, I mean, $400,000 house, you pay off your primary mortgage. Then with your money, you can choose in accordance as to how that gets dispersed to yourself. So as a title company, we have trust accounts which are very highly regulated.
Yeah.
Some people perform the form of just a check itself, and for which we can exchange and facilitate getting that to seller, and or we can also transmit funds via wire,
Yeah.
so they have a more instant access to their money.
Okay. And you just wire that right into my bank account?
You got it. So it'll come right to your bank account. Of course, after we verify your information, and then everything's finalized.
Yeah, you don't want 200K going to the wrong account.
No, and unfortunately, I mean, we've just seen wire fraud on this side
Yeah,
of the industry, and it's on the rise with not just proceeds, but with payoffs, et cetera. So we're just very conscientious and vigilant about our approach as to how we facilitate that now. But
yeah,
yes, that is a viable option for sellers to get their money.
gotcha. And so, yeah, there is a lot of wire fraud out there, and it comes in tricky forms. What is one of the things that you say to the clients at the very end in regards to that?
In regards to the wire fraud,
Yeah,
and
or
and
even the
so
letters that they might get, or
and so like on the purchasing side,
yeah,
of course, we have to disclose some information to the Department of Revenue. That's standard. And unless an individual has a court order to keep, their public information private,
yeah,
there's going to be companies, industries that just simply gain access to that information. And with that, I mean, they just simply try to mine and take advantage of individuals. So it is a very common theme to see, anywhere from additional lending offers to perhaps mortgage insurance offers to even just
hmm,
deed scams. And with these deed scams, there are a few companies out there that'll ask people for money, whether it be 80, 90, $100 to obtain certified copies of their warranty deed. And we, as a practice, once we record a warranty deed for a buyer, again, granting them title to the property, we
hmm,
return that to them so they can just file that away for their safekeeping. But again, after we've perfected their legal ownership of the property. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, those items will exist. They'll continue to exist. And we just caution individuals not to exchange further sums of money after closing, other
yeah,
than just their mortgage payment and any potential ancillary items like utilities,
hmm,
association, etc.
gotcha. Okay, yeah, and I kind of more of not necessarily a wire fraud scam, but still just a different angle to it where people try and just insert themselves unnecessarily. But yeah, you had
That's
something.
a fact. And so you just have to be, just especially cognizant to just not fall victim to paying anybody money. And again, I mean, even as we situate, I mean, we're all working with very sensitive information.
Yeah,
And people need to have that assurance and that their information and everything is safeguarded, in which
yeah,
it is. And we're very highly regulated. We cannot share people's information, nor would we. And so again, we have to be very, very careful about that as well. So
yeah. Right on, right on. Thank you. Well said. That's perfect. And I think it's good for people to know, that we are for them. Our clients, from getting pre-approved on the loan to representation and buying the home and structuring that correctly, inspection, and title company. I mean, title company plays a huge role in this process. So, my last question, which you've already done such a great job of answering most of it, most of the substance of it, but I'm going to ask it anyways, just in case there's anything else that comes to mind. What happens at a closing, and where does a closing happen?
So the closing will traditionally just take place at a title company. And so, for example, just referencing Edgewater Title Group, let's just use buyer in this particular circumstance.
Yeah.
Buyers will show up to our office, and we will have all the documents waiting for them. So again, prior to this, we've already done everything behind the scenes. We've worked in conjunction with their lender, again with the assumption that there's a lender, to get their loan documents, and as well there'll be some miscellaneous title documents that will get signed at closing. So they'll come into one of our conference rooms, and we'll go through all the motions. We'll recap on all the numbers again. We'll
Hmm,
remind them about utilities and setting up
hmm,
mail. We'll go through
hmm,
the motions of discussing the note and the mortgage and what they can anticipate for their payment as well, and as to
hmm,
whether or not their lender is gonna hang on to their mortgage or perhaps transfer that and if they can anticipate, a subsequent servicer just collecting payments from them in the future. And so all this is done within a relatively quick time frame. I'm not going to put, attach minutes to it by any means, but it all happens fairly quickly. And at that point, there's the ceremonial key handoff, and they're proud owners of a home.
Awesome. That's the favorite part. That's what everyone's excited. And then it's picture moment. Michael's the best photographer I could ever ask for. That's great. So as far as like, where does a closing happen? So there's different title companies that exist. Edgewater is one of them. And you have several locations. Is that right?
We have 4 locations in the metro area. So we have our Bloomington location. We have a Lakeville office. We have Maple Grove, and as well Excelsior.
Gotcha. So if someone's signing a closing on a home in Farmington, Minnesota, where would we probably meet with them?
Most likely you would end up in our Lakeville office just to facilitate that. And again, sometimes it's unique to and specific to where the property's located. Other times it perhaps could be relative to where the buyer currently resides and which location's just closest for them to accommodate the closing. So again, I mean, we always give them best option and try to accommodate, their availability on that specific set date, per the terms of the contract.
Yeah. And as I work across the Twin Cities, we've been able to take advantage of those different locations. And what was the fourth? So I've been to your Lakeville, I've been to Bloomington, I've been to Maple Grove. What was the 4th location that you said?
That's in Excelsior.
Excelsior. Okay.
Excelsior.
I haven't been to that one yet, but we'll get that one crossed off.
Well, just right off of Minnesota 7. So.
Gotcha. Well, excellent. We're going to jump right into our Q&A. If there is any questions out there, this is a recorded video. So if anyone has any questions afterwards that they want to reach out to me and just shoot me a message. I'm an open book. I'm transparent. I'd love to help people and get your questions answered. We never want anyone to think, and wonder like where things are at or what's going on. A lot of times I'll over explain things just so there is no worry or confusion there. And so by all means, if there is any questions out there, please let us know. And so it looks like we do have one. It says, how long can all of the title company take to get everything done? And what are some mistakes people make that you can help them avoid? So maybe like how long is it like when you're making sure all of the liens and things are clear? I guess how much work goes into it, and then closing itself, maybe how quick is that process?
And a lot of that, it just happens to translate into just being transaction specific. So of course, if an individual doesn't have restraints of having to wait for a lender and for underwriting, and let's just say that they're a cash buyer, we can conduct abstracting and put together a title commitment within a very short time frame. I mean, it's as quick as a day to, in certain circumstances, 72 hours, just depending on where the property happens to be situated and located. And with that said, and provided there aren't many or easy items to reconcile on the title commitment, it can all take place in a very short amount of time. So it's not uncommon to see cash offers happen within a week or even 2 weeks. I mean, just being reasonable. But in a traditional format, you're usually going to see anywhere from 30 to 45 days, and in certain circumstances, 60, as you can probably attest to, Leo. But again, I mean, it's more a matter of having to try to honor all the other terms of the contract, more so than us just, having that particular constraint. In truly where we find ourselves encountering some difficulties is most oftentimes in representing the sellers and not buyers. So the buyers themselves oftentimes don't have constraints unless there's judgments, et cetera, that are out there against them. And with that said, those do have to sometimes get reconciled. But again, that's a case specific circumstance. And so really it's all contingent on seller being able to perhaps having evidence and get together information so that we can acquire payoffs. Or if they had a loan that was paid off and their lender didn't what's called record a satisfaction against the property, that mortgage or loan will still show open or active as an active lien, and for which we need time to be able to reach out to them to track that down, to be able to record it with the county. So, but oftentimes all of this happens, can happen within a 30-day time frame.
So dependent on the moving parts. If a buyer is buying a home, that loan's got to get through underwriting. And so you're working directly with not only me, but you're working directly with the lender, that loan is getting through the underwriting and then getting the handoff to you at that point. And so that could take 30 days, 60 days versus a cash scenario. You don't have to wait for the underwriting or any of that. That can move along much quicker. And there was a time in the market where cash was king. But in this current market, a lot of times people are accepting offers for more, and so having a loan versus cash right now is kind of more. We see more loans than cash. So interesting times, but yeah.
Well, and that's always going to be the general assumption, is that there's going to be financing attached to the transaction. And from a buyer standpoint, and especially with just, common mistakes to avoid, I think that the big thing is just, number one, knowing what closing time, what closing location's been picked and specified. And again, everybody would be in contact with that respective buyer for which to solidify those details. And then furthermore, in terms of funds. So let's just say there happens to be certified funds that are brought to closing. And again, title companies don't take personal checks. Some won't take them at all. Most won't take them over $1,000. So it would be a cashier's check or certified funds. Okay. And that money would be paid directly to the title company. So in our case, it would be paid directly to Edgewater Title Group. And same thing. And if somebody wants to facilitate a wire, I know we just, touched point on this just a short while ago. It's always a high recommendation that we transmit everything secured, encrypted, password protected. They open that file up and then they re-verify the instructions with us prior to transmitting any monies to us.
Yeah. And so last question before we let you go here, because more comes to my mind as we're having this discussion, and I really just even there's so many little moving parts that it's hard to get everything in. You really learn a lot going through the process and mostly going through it a couple of times, but so you're handling, like, if I'm a client and I have a loan and I have a 3% down payment and it's $10,000, and the closing costs in addition to that and everything like that, you're kind of facilitating that all the money goes to the right places and does the right things, right?
That is correct. So now once we get documents from the lender, and of course, I know you've already touched probably some light on this with conversation with Kelly, but there's a closing disclosure that's issued to buyers a few days prior to the transaction occurring. And so with that said, that closing disclosure is just more for informational and just general reference purposes. Okay. So we will see a closing disclosure that perhaps could be that one or something to a very similar effect, but those are not the final numbers. So now what we do is we go back into our system and get a template of what the numbers should look like. We reproduce those numbers into our system. And then we also have to control for additional variables. So prorations with property taxes, prorations with association dues, et cetera. And then once we get a final number, then of course at that token, one can go ahead and safely, draw their funds and transmit that.
Gotcha. Well, excellent, man. You've done really, really good helping us answer these questions. And, for someone that's been through this process a number of times, it's probably, just it's a lot easier to retain after you've been through it a few times. But those who are tuning in that have maybe never been through the process or only been through it once and kind of was like, what just happened? This is why we're doing this, is we want to equip you and educate you as much as possible. And so if you have questions, even after this video, please reach out. If you're still wondering or something wasn't clear enough, please reach out, open door. Michael, you did a fantastic job. We look forward to having you back. And yeah,
appreciate
thank you
the
so
time.
much.
Absolutely. And I know it's a lot to absorb. So again, I mean, I'm always an open resource as well. So parlay your questions to Leo, and I'm certainly happy to work in conjunction with him with answering anything that surfaces in the future.
Awesome, man. Thanks, brother. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Take care now.
See you, everyone.